Welcome, and feel free to keep filtering in. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the celebration of life for Francine Goodrich on behalf of Milwaukie Lutheran and on behalf of the family. We really appreciate you being here today, taking a Sunday afternoon to be here in support of the Goodrich family and of Bruce, and certainly appreciate your presence. There's going to be a reception following the service today, so if you are not familiar with our building, it's basically just one big long hallway. So as you exit the sanctuary, take a left, follow that hallway all the way as far as you can, and you'll arrive in the fellowship hall, which is where the reception is going to be. It has been decorated in fall colors, as Franny would have liked, and there is plenty of wonderful food prepared for the following the service. Additionally, if you need to use the restrooms at any point in time, they are down that same hallway. About halfway down, you'll see a sign on the beam above the hallway pointing to the right, letting you know where the restrooms are. We have a wonderful service planned for you today. Hopefully you managed to grab a program on your way in. They look like this, and it has the order of service and all of the wonderful things in it. And a big thank you to everybody that is giving eulogies and doing music, to John and to Caleb for that wonderful prelude as well. Thank you. I invite us, as we gather today, to prepare our hearts and minds to be in this space together. So I invite us to take a moment of silence as we enter into this space. Welcome in the name of Jesus, the Savior of the world. We are gathered to worship, to proclaim Christ crucified and risen, to remember before God our sister Francine, to give thanks for her life, to commend her to our merciful Redeemer, and to comfort one another in our grief. Let us pray. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you today our sister. We thank you for giving her to us to know and to love as a companion in our pilgrimage on earth. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see that death has been swallowed up in the victory of our Lord Jesus Christ, so that we may live in confidence and hope until by your call we are gathered to our heavenly home in the company of all your saints, through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. We have a piece of music from Julie Scott, who couldn't be here today, and she wanted to share a memory of Francine. So let me turn on the audio things, and I'm going to play this for us now. And then we're going to hear a recording that she did from His Eye is on the Sparrow. And of course, my Bluetooth just disconnected in the 5 seconds it took me to go up here. There we go.
That I would like to share. I was a little girl when I first met Franny, and I was the first of my Elliott family to meet her, a badge that I wore very proudly. We were all so excited to meet this obviously spectacular gal who had won Butch's heart. She was everything and more that we had all hoped for. That sparkling smile and infectious laugh. We all knew Butch had met his match and mate for life. The second memory was from just a few years ago. My husband Doug. I have two and infectious laugh. We all knew Butch had met his match and mate for life. The second memory was from just a few years ago. My husband Doug and I visited Butch and Franny on a motorcycle trip of the Pacific Northwest. On that visit, Franny and I were sharing a quiet and very private moment. We were talking about marriage. I will always remember, Franny said, "Oh, Bruce and I have had our hard times, ups and downs. But oh, Julie, I just love him. I love him like crazy." I had so hoped to be there today to sing for Franny. However, I just couldn't make that happen. This is the song I had chosen for her celebration of life. "His Eye is on the Sparrow," an old and heartfelt gospel song. It is how I will see Franny now, free from the pain and worries of this life, free as a bird, perhaps sitting on a branch with her beloved Elizabeth. Here's
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free, and His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Let not thy heart be troubled. His tender words I hear, and resting on His goodness, I lose my doubts and my fears. Though by the path He leadeth, but and I know He watches me. His eyes on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. And His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me.
I'm going to turn things over to Pastor Scott Allen now, who's going to read the 23rd Psalm. And I would say if you're sharing eulogies or reading a poem today, you can use either of the mics, either the pulpit mic or this mic. I'll be happy to help you out.
I forgot my program and didn't bring it with me here. My question was whether this 23rd Psalm was printed. You have it. That's great. Oh, I have a copy. Yeah, I just didn't know who else might. So you may stand if you're able, and you're welcomed and invited to read along. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul. God leads me in the paths of righteousness for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me. God's rod and God's staff comforts me. God prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. God anoints my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of my Lord forever. You may be seated.
And then we've got some special music from Caleb Goodrich, who's going to play Claire de Lune.
When I told everybody in my family pursue music as life, there was a couple concerned looks when I told everybody, but there was one smile that was bigger than everybody else's, and it was Francine, my grandma. And coming from two different musical worlds, mine a jazz background mostly, hers classical, there was always one thing we could always agree on, and that was our love of Debussy, especially this song. It's been a special part of our family forever. Our Fran had her stage fright, which was truly a shame because she was a spectacular musician. And those who were lucky enough to get to hear her play and all that were truly lucky. So I figured there was no more better of a fitting song than this Claire de Lune. She's pretty popular now, but it's pretty special to our family. It's always the number one request when she would sit down at the piano, no matter what holiday, no matter what birthday it was. There was always one song that was recommended or requested. It was Claire de Lune. And I appreciate her for putting the seed in my brain as one last little musical challenge. The song was written for piano, which has a lot more buttons than I do. was a great chance to feel creatively inspired to arrange it for saxophone. So I'm gonna blow a few notes to make sure it still works, and we'll get right into it.
And then I think we have some poetry. Gary Pendleton was going to read a piece from E. Cummings. And Gary, you can use this mic or the pulpit mic, whichever is more comfortable.
Good afternoon. Goodrich asked me to read a particular poem, a poem that became important to both Fran and to her daughter Beth. It's an odd poem for such an event as this because the poet, E. Cummings, is not a particularly easy poet to read. As a matter of fact, he was known for being rather eccentric in his use of punctuation and phraseology. He was also a painter and attempted in many of his painting or in his poems to present a visual inclusion in the written word that added another dimension to how poetry is perceived. In addition to that, in his use of punctuation, he tried very hard to let a reader decide how the poem should be punctuated and aspirated and generally projected. And so he wrote many poems for which the way in which the reader interprets how you should read the poem changes the meaning of the poem, sometimes considerably. The way this got started with Fran and with Beth was kind of an odd thing, in that my wife and I had called Fran and Butch up just randomly one afternoon some years ago just to check in because we're in the middle of Illinois and they're in Portland, Oregon now and all of that. And we were talking and Beth was there. And Beth, in her enthusiastic effervescence, as Beth always presented, hi, how you guys doing? Well, hi, Beth, how are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, well, I met a new boy. I'm doing yoga again. I'm getting ready to run. This goes on for 35 or 40 minutes with Beth. And we're listening. The last phrase, she says, and I have been reading poetry and attempting to write poetry. And I said, well, that's interesting. Well, why are you doing that? And she said, well, I don't know. I think I should appreciate that more. She said, my uncle, Charles is a poet. I said, yeah, I know that. And he said, and she said, I like his poetry. I said, well, that's good. What other poetry do you like? Do you like Longfellow? And she said, I tried to read Evangeline, but I could never get through it. And I said, that's okay. I could never get through it either. And down this list of poets, famous and unfamous, we went. There were things that she liked and things that she didn't. There was a woman, not very well known, probably not appreciated enough, Traumer, I think is her last name, Rosemary Traumer, wrote a book of poetry that Beth liked considerably. And because poetry is oddly important to me, I am not a poet. I am a reader of poetry, and I'm a reader of poetry because I have an affliction, which I hope doesn't strike me right now. I stammer, and I stutter, and I do that badly. And in my youth, I was committed to torture by various therapists who shoved marbles in my mouth and did all kinds of torturous things to try to make me stop. And they didn't work. But a doctor of mine actually said, you ought to try reading aloud. Why? Because scientific studies were showing that the pathways that a human uses to read aloud are different than the pathways when you just talk. And so if you can practice while you can use these different pathways, perhaps that will help. And as a matter of fact, some famous people, including former President Joe Biden and a number of other famous people, have used reading, and particularly the reading of poetry, to help with stammering. And it wasn't very long after I started trying that I ran into Mr. Cummings's work, because that was about in 1965, which is just right after E. Cummings died. And I was introduced to his poetry by another friend of mine, and I began to read it. And as I said earlier, it's a very difficult poet to read often. And it sort of was grist for the experiment that I was trying to perform. In doing so, I read almost all of his work, and I came to really like him as somebody trying to express particularly deep emotion, which I think he does very well, but he does it in kind of an odd way. And I mentioned to Beth in that phone call, I said, have you ever tried to read E. Cummings? And she said, well, no, I've heard of him, she said, I think, but I've never really read him. And I said, well, how about this? How about I send you a book of his poetry? And I sent her E. Cummings's collected works. And I didn't hear back from her for the longest time. But over a period of time, just a little bit by little bit, part of E. Cummings's corpus came back to me occasionally. What did I think about this? What does this mean? How should I say this? And I said, no, and we talked about it, I don't know, for a period of about 10 years, I guess. And I never knew it at the time, but not only was she sharing Cummings back to me, but she was also sharing it with Fran. And when I would talk to Fran occasionally, some of that would come from Fran to me about, Beth and I read this poem, this, that, and the other. And as it happens, in the last months of Beth's life, there was one particular poem that Fran often would mention and turn to in trying to express how she felt about Beth. And I think Beth expressed that same feeling about how she felt about Fran. So that's what this poem is that particular poem out of all the poems that Beth was reading to Fran and Fran was thinking about. This is the poem that they both came to like about E. Cummings. And so I'll share it with you. It was written in 1952 by Cummings. It was written ostensibly for his longtime moose and partner, Marianne Moreland, I can't remember. And it was one of the 10 poems that Harvard University exhibited as the reason why they invited Mr. Cummings to be the principal adjunct professor of poetry at Harvard. So, for that. And it is not one of his really difficult programs. It is really very simple for Cummings. So, the punctuation, the phraseology is my interpretation. It is probably wrong, but it is what it is. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful, you are my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root, and the bud of the bud, and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. Thank you.
And then if Charles is here, yeah.
So lovely to see you all today. I have a couple of poems to share. First, I want to bring a message from a couple of my son, Elliot, who lives in Oakland and couldn't make it here today. Elliot writes, "When I remember Aunt Fran, I think of winter family gatherings, the cold, low days that framed my struggles as a teen and a young adult. Always there was Fran, welcoming through the door at Thanksgiving with her signature smile. Her warmth, her acceptance. No matter how I was able to show up that year, I could depend on being loved by Fran. She was a hearth of sorts for our family, and around her, each of us was exactly enough, because all she asked for was her warmth and love to be reciprocated. And in reciprocating, I became a better person. I hope to carry Fran's ethic of welcoming with me for the rest of my life." Gary mentioned poet Rosemary Watola Tromer, and it's one of her poems that I, in fact, had chosen to share. Rosemary Tromer had a son die suddenly in his 20s, and she's written beautifully about loss and grief and coming to terms with grief. This is called "Those of Us Who Choose to Turn Toward Grief." Somehow we find each other. Though our gathering doesn't fix or change the loss, there is tenderness, even beauty, in coming together. I have read in Switzerland, it's illegal to own just one guinea pig. It's considered animal abuse because they are social beings. We too are social beings. Perhaps we don't sniff and nudge and squeak and rumble strut, but we cradle, we hum, we hold, we whisper soft encouragement, light candles, offer tissues, hug. There are times when I deeply need to be alone with my grief. Even then, curled into myself, quiet in a quiet, dark room, even then, I am held by the certainty I am not alone. What a gift we give to ourselves, to each other, when, in our grief, we enter the circle of those who grieve and meet each other with open hands and say, "I see you, brother. I see you, sister. I know it isn't easy. Here I am." And a poem by the beloved Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh about the ever-presence of life and death. It's called Oneness. The moment I die, I will try to come back to you as quickly as possible. I promise it will not take long. It isn't true. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? I am already with you as I die each moment. I come back to you in every moment. Just look, feel my presence. If you want to cry, please cry. And know that I will cry with you. The tears you shed will heal us both. Your tears are mine. The earth I tread this morning transcends history. Spring and winter are both present in the moment. The young leaf and the dead leaf are really one. My feet touch deathlessness, and my feet are yours. Walk with me now. Let us enter the dimension of oneness and see the cherry tree blossoms in winter. Why should we talk about death? I don't need to die to be back with you. Thanks.
Our anthem for today is Be Thou My Vision. It's in the hymnals in front of you. Those are the larger of the red books. It's number 793. And John told me, he said the Methodist hymnal only has 3 verses. Ours has 4, so we'll sing 4 verses. But please feel free to stand as you're able. It's easier to sing when you're standing. And I invite you to be seated again. And we now have those who will be sharing eulogies. And I believe Catherine Hartman is first. And again, feel free to use whichever mic. Catherine, I think you were going to use the pulpit if that's.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for attending. It is my honor to give my tribute for the celebration of the life of Francine Beth Brooks Goodrich. I have the pleasure and the privilege of calling her my aunt. I have to tell you this first. I have been called, my name is Catherine, my given name, but Aunt Fran, I've been called Kitty my whole life, all through by my family, my siblings, my parents, school friends, work friends, but not Aunt Fran. She refused to call me Kitty. And I remember I was about 30, and I said, Fran, why do you always call me Catherine? You never call me Kitty. And she told, Fran just said it like it was, you know? She was honest and frank with me forever. She never held back. And she said, well, I thought that was the dumbest name. And I refuse to call you Kitty. Catherine is a beautiful name, and I love Catherine. And I have to tell you, she always made me love the name Catherine. It always sounded so sweet and beautiful when she said it. When my parents said it, it wasn't good. I was in trouble. So, you know, my cousins, too, they went back and forth. They didn't know what to call me. Kitty, Catherine, you know. I know Aaron, finally, when we were teenagers, he was a teenager, I was always over at their house. He finally just started calling me Twiggy, you know. He greeted me today by, hi, Twiggy, you know. So, Francine Beth Brooks Goodrich was born on February 3rd, 1951 in Alton, Illinois. She was the daughter of George and Alice Brooks, my grandparents, and she was preceded in death by two brothers, infant William Aaron, and who she always referred to as Baby Aaron. That's all I ever knew him was Baby Aaron. And then until this Aaron came along, and then, you know, my dad was the oldest brother. He was 13 years and 3 months older than she was. And he just passed away 6 months ago. And today is his 88th birthday. Happy heavenly birthday, Dad. She has another brother, and that's you, George. George is here today. He's the middle brother. And we will cling to you, Uncle George. And as we all know too well, that she was preceded in death by her beloved daughter, Elizabeth Brooke, Beth Goodrich, on July 7th of 2024, just last year. And on September 6th, 2025, almost 14 months to the day, Fran passed away peacefully at 10:30 with her loving husband, Bruce, who I call Uncle Butch, by her side. And I always take comfort in knowing that at that moment, she opened her eyes to be reunited with her daughter, Beth, no longer in pain and fully restored. Aunt Fran was born a baby boomer, and she's the daughter of the greatest generation. And she embodied so many of those traits that define it. She had a strong work ethic, optimism, independence, and a desire for a quality of life. She was so self-assured, determined, and always found solutions for problems. And she had an unwavering value for family, education, and community. Aunt Fran was a registered nurse, a lifelong caregiver. She graduated from Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, Illinois in 1984 with her associate degree in nursing. She went on to work in labor and delivery, the hospice unit, and the Family Service Visiting Nurse Association of Alton, Illinois. She also worked for the Asthma Foundation of St. Louis, provided hospice care out here in Oregon in Tillamook County. And then she went on to serve the state of Oregon as manager of maternal child health until she retired. Something that she was always very proud of. She went on to earn her bachelor's degree from Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville in 1995. She always I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse since 1987. She always encouraged me, and She even told me, Catherine, I'll give you my notes. You can use my notes. Because I went to Lewis and Clark. She was a good note taker. She wasn't just, being a nurse was just not her career, it was her calling, and she had a gift of connection. She didn't just take care of people, she listened to them, understood them, and made them feel seen. My aunt referred to her, I know I'm jumping around here, but my aunt always referred to her dad, as my grandpa Brooks, as the Renaissance man. Well, she absolutely was the Renaissance man's daughter. She was cultured and curious, seemed to know something about everything, art, science, literature, you name it. I used to think she knew everything. Well, everything except math. And I learned just last year that she discovered the Portland Ballet once she moved out here, and she loved the Nutcracker. And it became her and Beth's tradition every year at Christmas to go see the Nutcracker. And when Beth passed, she and Josh went, and I said, you know, Aunt Fran, I've never seen the Nutcracker. And she told me right after that, before she was even diagnosed, she said, you need to come out next Christmas, and I will take you to the Nutcracker. And that's what I had planned to do. And I did get a chance to tell her that I will go see the Nutcracker this December 21st, but in St. Louis. And I'll be thinking of her. She had so many wonderful qualities, interests, and talents. She loved music, and she once told me the reason she was drawn to this church, Pastor Jesse, was because of the Christmas concert that you put on. And she started attending that several years ago. And last year, when she needed a larger venue for Beth's celebration, she told me that she had started attending services, and she planned to become a member. And the reason was because she felt comforted and connected here and welcomed, and she said everybody was so nice to her here, and it just brought her comfort. And I was so happy that she did that. She was a nurse, a caregiver, a counselor, a beautiful human being with a sixth sense. Brenda, we were talking last night. You told me she was like, is she clairvoyant? And I said, well, I think so. She knew the sixth sense. She connected with all kinds of people, and she knew how to talk to them, how to comfort them, and most importantly, how to listen. From the time I can remember, she always listened to me. She was my role model, my example of strength and grace, and she had a special way about her that instantly put people at ease. Her soothing voice and calm demeanor could make even the hardest days lighter. She was even with me during the birth of my first two children. The third one, she says, you're on your own. But it was her idea. She was my coach. And I think it was from her labor and delivery years, you know. But when Justin came along in 1987, she says, I'll be your coach. And she was with me every minute. And I'll never forget that. I have a picture back on the table that I brought that is a picture of her holding my son right after he was born. And she's in her little scrub hat. So please look for that picture. It's very special to me. She loved, like Elliot talked about, where's Charles? Charles, you talked about Elliot talking about the Christmas. Well, before they moved to Portland, she always hosted Christmas in Alton at the Liberty House. Well, I remember going to the Liberty House so many times, and it was just magical. Her home was just magical at Christmas. She loved hosting Christmas gatherings and decorating for every holiday, but her tables were always festive with tablecloths. And she always had little bowls of M&Ms, always. everywhere, you know, and I love that. And I love M&Ms because she loved them. No matter the season, she just always went over the top with her decorations. Go by her house at Halloween, which you did a great job putting her decorations out. She loved Halloween too, dressing up as Mrs. Goodrich to hand out candy for the trick-or-treaters. She just made it fun. And I remember when my kids were little, I waited to the last minute to I could never get it together for costumes, and I waited the last minute, and I'd call her, and I'd say, Aunt Fran, can I come over and raid your Halloween trunk? She had a trunk of costumes. And so I would come over and get her into her trunk and get my kids ready for Halloween. And today, my daughter Jessie, that's the third one, she loved Aunt Fran's Halloween trunk. And she now has one of her own because she goes all out on Halloween costumes. And I told her, I said, you need to save those costumes and put them in a trunk. Uncle Butch, you were the love of her life. And I loved hearing her tell your love story in her words. You were both blessed with this beautiful marriage and a lifetime of shared memories. And together you raised these beautiful 3 children, Aaron, Josh, Beth, and later blessed with Cindy and Caleb and Darby, the 2 beautiful and talented grandchildren. She loved you with all her heart. Caleb and Darby, you are her legacy. She was so proud of you. Caleb, your music and creativity. And Darby, with your photography skills and your outgoing personality. It's just, she saw in you her best qualities. She loved music and photography. And I have to tell you, she kept her grandmother memory alive for me. I never knew Grandma Fry, but she was so much like Grandma Fry with her sense of humor and her infectious laugh. But I was 3 when she died. I don't remember her. But she kept that memory alive for me. And I know you'll do the same for your Grammy. And you made this her home. Portland was not her home. And matter of fact, I remember when she moved out here, she didn't want to come. She didn't. She went kicking and screaming, you know? I remember because I took her to the airport. And we had a good talk on the way, but I wasn't shook up about her leaving because I thought she's going to come back. She's going to hate it out there. She's not going to like it. This is not her home. Darby and Caleb, you made this her home. And she loved it here with you. I know because she told me. But to me, she wasn't just Aunt Fran the nurse. She was my touchstone, my anchor, one of the most important people in my life. For as long as I can remember, for the last 60 years, she's been the person I have gone to for everything. And I mean everything, the good news, the bad news, the times I wasn't sure what to do. She was always my first call, always my first call. And when she moved out here to Portland, we didn't grow apart. Matter of fact, we grew closer. And the phone calls, Butch knows, they were 2 hours minimum. They were 2 hours. And yeah. And Mike knows too. Yeah, so she never lost contact with me. And matter of fact, she made it a point to bring me out here. I first came out in 2004 with my daughter Megan, and we had a great time. And she insisted I come out in 2008 with Mike, and Butch and Fran took us to Port Townsend, which was one of the best trips we ever took. We went to Seattle, Port Townsend, Washington, a beautiful trip. And we always think of that. And I have all the posters. I've been collecting posters. Let's see, I lost my place. She just had this incredible way about her. People were just drawn to her. She had such a warmth and grace and calm strength. I was drawn to her. She was an amazing listener. She didn't just hear you, she understood you. She always, and I know it wasn't just me, it was for everybody. She did this for everybody, many people. She always seemed to know what you needed, even when you couldn't put it into words. In many ways, she was like a life coach to me and so many others. She could listen, guide, and somehow make everything feel manageable. And of course, she had this great sense of humor, and she had the kind of laughter that could fill a room, warm and contagious, just like her smile. And I'll always remember our girls' trip in 23. Fran says, let's go on a girls' trip to Cannon Beach. Beth, and you bring your friend Leslie, and we'll all go and rent an Airbnb to go to Cannon Beach. And we did that. And we had the best time, and I'll always remember my best friend Leslie from the 6th grade. She's here today. She says she's the one that introduced Fran to Leanne Morgan, the comedian, and we were waiting for a table at a restaurant, and Leslie whips out her phone and says, Fran, you got to look at this. Poor Fran, she lost it. She was doing everything she could do just to hold it together, and she just laughed and laughed and laughed. And one of the lines that Leanne Morgan says is that we can't do math, but we're fun, you know? And so Fran and I would always say, yeah, but we're fun, you know, we can't do math. I couldn't do math either. So, and she also volunteered in so many ways at the hospice house. And she found the Hopewell House, and she knew that would be the place for Beth when the time came. And she volunteered in the gardens, and she created this beautiful white garden and planted out, and it was planted outside of the room where she stayed at the Hopewell House. And it was just a perfect reflection of her spirit, peaceful, nurturing, and it was just full of quiet beauty. Aunt Fran loved flowers and gardening. She made things grow, both in the garden and in people. She had such a gift for decorating, too. We used to call it, and I think Josh used this word, we called it Fran Shuaying her house, because she had her own unique flair and style. You've all seen it, I know you have, and you all loved her houses. Everything she touched just came together, just full of personality. And I remember every house, even the very first house on Oakwood, the little one-bedroom house, it was just so cute. It had all these, she just made it cute. She had a fish tank and crocheted little pillows, and her and Butch, back then in the 70s, they made these shadow boxes, just full of, just always crafty and talented. And when I was younger, from the time I was, I think, 11, I babysat my cousins, and Aaron's only 5 years younger than me, but I was babysitting, I was in charge. And honestly, that's when I knew what kind of mom I wanted to be, because I hung out at their house a lot when I was in junior high and high school and early in college. And I also knew what kind of home I wanted to have. I learned so much by watching her. She taught me that you could make your home beautiful with whatever you love, something new, something antique, something repurposed, eclectic, or handmade. It didn't matter where it came from. If you loved it, if it spoke to you, it belonged. I remember when I was in junior high, I was coming over to babysit, and she was always rearranging the furniture. And I said to her, I said, why are you always rearranging the furniture? And she says, well, if you rearrange the furniture, it's like having something new. And I've thought of that forever, and I do that all the time. I just rearranged my kitchen last week, and I know she would like me to know. And Josh used to say, oh my gosh, you could have a lamp store. She had so many lamps everywhere. Well, I have 4 lamps in my kitchen because Fran had lamps everywhere too. And she just had this thing for lamps. She loved them. She kept them on 24 hours a day. And I used to you know, it just made the house feel so cozy and warm. And she just had a beautiful way of displaying art and making every corner feel special. I always wanted my house to feel like hers. And I even got a Hoosier cabinet because she had a Hoosier cabinet. To me, she just wasn't just my aunt. She was my cheerleader, my sounding board, my safe place. She believed in me and gave me confidence when I didn't have it myself. She encouraged me, grounded me, and she reminded me who I was. It's hard to imagine life without her because she's been such a constant presence. But even though she's gone, I know she's still here, in the flowers that bloom, in the lamp that glows, left on late at night. I leave a lamp on all night long, and in the warmth of a cozy home filled with love. Aunt Fran, thank you for everything. Your love, your laughter, your creativity, and your wisdom. You've left such a mark on my heart and the hearts of everyone who knew you. I love you, and I'll miss you always. But I know you'll always be with me, guiding me, encouraging me, and reminding me to rearrange the furniture once in a while. I know that she loved me as I loved her because she told me so in every card she sent, always signing the card, "Love you with all my Aunt Fran heart." And I have to say this too. There's a song by Lauren Daigle, and the lyrics just say it all. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you, but thank God I do. Until we meet again in heaven, I'll leave a light on for you.
Hi, everybody. Just going to take a deep breath here for a second. I'm sorry. My mom was 19 years, 19 days. I'm sorry. She was almost 20. Let's say that. Not even quite as old as my own daughter when she had me. And I often tell people we kind of grew up together. My dad, too. He was a young man, just home from Vietnam. Every year, without fail, on my birthday, at exactly 10:49 in the morning, the phone will ring, and I pick it up, and there she'd be. She'd say, "Good morning, son. You're officially born now." And then she would joke often, "One of these days, you're going to catch up with me." And then she'd tell me that I was her favorite kid out of all three. But I know she did that for all of us, because that's how she was. My mom never failed to be my biggest supporter. My dad, too. They always encouraged all of my crazy dreams, schemes, and they did everything they could to help me get where I wanted to be in life. And when I became a father, she devoted herself to being the best Grammy. Just don't ever call her grandma. That was her one rule. And she picked up her life in the place where she had always lived. And she moved all the way out here just to be close to us so that she could help me be a good parent, just like she always was. Now that she's gone to be with my sweet sister, the grief that remains can be really hard to accept and understand sometimes. And I just try to remind myself that such grief can only come from deep love. And as such, grief is only love that's got nowhere to go. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here, for coming from all over the place. One thing that wasn't in my talk that I kind of thought about when listening to Catherine was that one of the gifts that Fran gave me every year when they went to the Nutcracker is that I got to be the Uber driver. And I didn't have to go to the Nutcracker. Yeah. And I was not only allowed to drive them there and pick them up, but I would take them out to dinner afterwards. So, but I didn't have to go to the Nutcracker. So, this is our love story. And I suppose the beginning of the story should start with how Francine and I met. I know some of you have heard this story, and a couple of you were even at that meeting. But for those who don't, it bears retelling. It was 1967, and I was a student at the very small campus, Alton campus of Southern Illinois University. Being a small campus, my buddies and I were always looking for some form of entertainment. We were always looking for social activities, and we decided to have a sock hop dance, which was very popular at the time. Everybody decorated their best and craziest pair of socks and went to a dance. I was a self-appointed ticket seller / taker, so that I could check out all the girls, as they came through the door. Well, a group of girls came up the stairs, and I immediately saw this really cute brunette. And I thought, wow, she's pretty cute. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, she came to the sock hop with no socks on. So I pulled her aside and I said, what's the deal? To which she said, a girl simply does not wear socks with Bass Weegian penny loafers, which were all the rage at the time. Of course, I let her in. And we hit it off immediately, and she even let me drive her home after the dance. I asked her if she would like to go out on a date with me, and she replied, "Well, I'd love to, but I have to ask my parents' permission." I said, "What? Wait a minute, how old are you? You told me you were a sophomore." She says, "I am in high school." Anyway, her folks consented, amazingly, only if we double dated with her best friend Irene, who is here. Anyway, the rest is history. We had the date, and 3 years later, Irene was her maid of honor. We were married in 1970, soon after I completed a stint in Vietnam. As newlyweds, soon baby Aaron came along. We were young and poor, but so much in love. Thanks to Fran's father, we were able to purchase a tiny little house that he had fixed up for renting. He sold it to us for $10,500. That's a lot of money to us back then. We were very busy learning how to parent and working and enclosing the carport into a second bedroom. Soon, between a child and work and night school, we outgrew the little house and moved to a larger home just in time for me to become a partner in an auto parts store and welcome little, not so little, 10-pound, 5-ounce Joshua to the brood. Oh yes, and Fran was going to nursing school at the time. It was along this time that we fell in love with a 120-year-old historic brick home in downtown Alton that we bought. But we didn't stay there very long because it was only 2-bedroom, and surprise. In 1980, we welcomed Elizabeth, Beth, and we moved to the Liberty Street house to raise our family. In 1993, Aaron came to Oregon to attend PNCA Art College. He immediately fell in love with the state where folks said you could surf the Pacific in the morning and snowboard Mount Hood that same night. He soon convinced his Alton sweetie, Cindy Mayhair, to move to Oregon, and after graduation, they married in 1997. They knew Oregon was going to be their home. When Caleb Alton, our first grandbaby, was born in 2003, we decided we didn't want to watch our grandkids grow up from 2,000 miles away. We arranged for the move. The U-Haul truck was packed to the gills, and wiener dog Tasha and I were set to leave the next morning, with Fran following by plane. No way was she going to take that trip. The night before my departure, Elizabeth, who had recently graduated from SIU Edwardsville, was planning to go to Chicago for grad school. The night before my departure, she changed her mind and decided that she was going to come with us. Well, we opened up the U-Haul, pulled enough stuff out to make room for her treasures, and I went and got a car hauler to haul her precious VW, and westward ho we went. It wasn't, as you've heard, an easy transition for Fran, who had never lived anywhere else. However, in 2005, when Darby Rose was born, she decided she'd stay. I mean, she'd already made up her mind, but that really hooked her in. It also helped that in 2001, Josh had left his job at the Omaha taught children's theater to make Portland home. So we were all together. Franny, as she liked to be called after retirement, was such a great lover. Fortunately for me, she loved me. She loved her family immensely, especially her grandbabies, who have grown up to be such wonderful, loving, caring, and talented people. Also friends, associates, and passers-by. And oh boy, she loved babies. And even when in our 70s, she would meet one and get to hold it, she would say, "Wouldn't you like to have another baby?" She also loved being a caring nurse to folks from all walks of life. She loved all animals except snakes, especially wiener dogs, butterflies, hummingbirds, owls, and she really missed cardinal birds and fireflies that don't dwell in the Northwest. She loved her flowers and plants that she tended to and studied them from the confines of her beloved she shed. She loved to travel, and after retirement, she got to fulfill a lifelong dream of seeing Paris and traveling around with her best friend Irene and Sue and other gal pals. She loved Maui. We went there 4 times, but the best time was when 11-year-old Darby and 13-year-old Caleb flew out solo to spend a week with us. She loved all holidays. Even though our attic space was getting cramped to make room for more decorations, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, but especially Halloween, when Mrs. Goodrich would shine. She loved to surprise me. Prior to our moving from Illinois to Oregon, I was a student at the Northwest School for Wooden Boat Building in Port Townsend, Washington. I had been there 4 months and was missing my lady. The day before Halloween, after a 2-hour lecture in an extremely warm classroom, the session ended and we happily descended the stair, hot, tired, and hungry. To our surprise, at the bottom of the stairs stood a witch with a large cauldron full of candy. Yippee! I reached for a handful of candy and I thanked the mysterious witch, who had a sign around her neck that said, "The Sea Witch wishes you a happy Halloween." As I thanked her, she cackled and turned the sign over, and it said, "This sea witch loves Sailor Bruce." I didn't know it was her. Imagine my surprise and embarrassment. However, Sailor Bruce and the Sea Witch had a wonderful Halloween. The end of my story comes too soon. We hadn't planned on saying goodbye to Beth last year, and certainly not my Franny this year. But the evil cancer doesn't care which families it tears apart. What I do know is that my Franny's faith was strong. She believed in God, in Jesus, and the Blessed Mother. She believed that after there would be no more pain, and she would be reunited with our precious daughter and many others. And I believe that too. Thank you.
In a brief moment, you'll be offered an opportunity to share a special story or a brief memory of Fran that you hold dear. At that time, I'll ask you to raise your hand and I'll bring a portable microphone to you. The brief story that I want to share with you describes the first time I met both Bruce and Fran. It was in 2006, almost 20 years ago, and I was living in the city of Nehalem along the northern Oregon coast, pastoring the Nehalem Bay United Methodist Church. A member of my congregation told me that a couple had just moved into town and the husband was building a sailboat in their garage. Well, having an interest in boats, I immediately decided the pastoral visit was important and needed. But I didn't want to come across rude by just knocking on this couple's door unannounced. So instead, every day for 2 weeks, I drove by their house, hoping I could catch one of them outside. And finally, one day as I drove by, I noticed the garage door was open and someone was inside, and I figured this was probably the only invitation I was going to get. I parked my car, walked up the driveway, and introduced myself to Bruce, who showed me the boat that he was building in his garage. And it was a beautiful boat. And as we talked, I was impressed that Bruce was such a great guy, and I hoped we would get to know each other better. Well, after a while, Fran came outside to see who her husband was talking to. And I introduced myself to Fran, explaining that I was the pastor of the local United Methodist Church and that I'd heard that her husband was building a boat in their garage and I'd stopped by to see it. And Fran began laughing, and then she replied, "So you're the preacher man. I've heard about you." And it was at that moment that I knew I was going to become good friends with the Goodriches. And initially, my relationship with Bruce was focused around boating, but it wasn't long until we were also sharing more personal aspects of our lives with each other. And my relationship with Fran began primarily focused around humor. And for example, from our first meeting, Fran always referred to me and introduced me to others as preacher man. Well, I've never had a nickname, and frankly, I have never wanted one. So I shared that with Fran, and she made it clear that it did not really matter what I might want. She was the one in charge. And from that point on, I was never reverend. I was not pastor. I was not Scott. I was preacher man. And that's how the family has addressed me ever since. Occasionally, Fran and I would set our humor aside and have some very serious discussions. We would talk with each other about the people we loved and cared for, primarily family and friends. And we'd talk about personal challenges we each were facing. And that was something due to my pastoral work that I rarely shared with others. But I was never just Fran's pastor. I was preacher man. I'll conclude by saying that Fran and I would laugh with and at each other 6 days of the week. But by the seventh day, we then shared some of our deepest thoughts, feelings, celebrations, and concerns. There was always lots of laughter, and occasionally there were tears. If there is a brief comment or story you'd like to share, I'll ask you that when I get down to the microphone that you raise your hand and I'll come to you.
was going to say, Scott, I'm also capable of running around, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jan Hendrickson, and I was born and raised in Alton, Illinois, and I wanted to share my memories of Francine. It was a Friday in the summer of 1967 that I met Francine and Irene. I had plans with two other friends, Sandy and Jill, to cruise around town, stopping or just driving through two drive-ins to see other friends or find out if a party was going on by someone we knew. Sandy asked if I wouldn't mind picking up Irene and Francine to go along with us, and she said that they were 3 years younger than me, but very mature for their age. And that's how our friendship began. I loved to listen to Francine talk. Her sweet voice was soft and lyrical, and she used the tone of her voice, and what she said kept your attention. She had a wonderful sense of humor, and I loved to make her laugh. She had many interests and took the time to be knowledgeable in all of them. Her life's work was nursing, which reflected her caring nature. Francine was one of those rare people who took the time, as the old adage says, to stop and smell the roses. So Francine, who I considered one of my sisters, Irene being the other, I love you, but I must leave you to heaven to be with God and your loved ones in paradise, where you will have eternity to stop and smell the roses.
Is there anybody, excuse me, is there anybody else that would like to share there?
Hello, my name is Andre Middleton, and I met Fran through her son, Aaron. I didn't go to PNCA, but I went to the film school across the way, and there were many afternoons where we would just sit and talk amongst all the other artists like Ezra and John, or get pizza from Escape from New York. And I, too, became a parent, and my daughter's here. Hi, Matt. And Fran was such a role model, such an example, and I, too, am a better parent for it. And I can also say, in all honesty, that she called me your favorite as well. The amount of love and joy and the amount of memories that I hold are because Fran decided to marry Bruce, and because Fran decided to move out to be with her son and his new wife. I, for many, many years, have had pictures of Darby and Caleb in my wallet. And I came from a single mom. I'm an only child from Brooklyn, New York. But I got a real example of what a loving family is. And there was never a moment that I wasn't welcome in their home. There was never a moment, no matter how crazy things might have been, that if I was there, and I was a part of what was happening. And I can't thank Fran enough for sharing her life, for sharing her love. And I can't thank you all enough for sharing your grief. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda Miller, and I knew Fran from Alton, Illinois, And I got to know her more in the last 20 years, I guess. And, we had a vacation out here, and Fran, as you know, had so many positive attributes. And I thought about what a couple that were most important that I noticed. And, one was her lively and caring spirit, as you all know, and it just warmed everybody's hearts and everybody around her. And, the other one I think about was her gift of being grateful in all circumstances. um, just grateful about life. She would always try to turn the focus away from herself and toward the other person who was important to her. You know, she just wanted to hear about what was going on in your lives. And I always, admired that. And we shared a few things together, our love of Alton as we moved away to be with our grandkids, as I did, Jeff and I did too. And our love and care for our girls as they were friends through high school and afterwards. And our birthday is twins because she'd call me her birthday twin. And so we shared that, and she'd always send all kinds of cute cards like she did to many of you. And but hers would always be the best because they would be decorated to the nines. You know, there'd be stickers and drawings and everything on them, and just like Fran does. So I did. So anyway, we loved her.
Hi, I'm Jamie, and this is my daughter, Maxine. Fran and Maxine and I joined Milwaukie Lutheran at the same time, and she quickly became our church buddy. We looked forward every weekend to see her and be with her. And Darby, we learned so much about you because she said that my Maxine reminded her of her Darby. So I feel like I already know you. Our time with her was too short. I wish I would have known her longer. And Bruce, you know how much we love you, and we're always here from you. And Max wants to say something real fast.
So, as my mom just shared, Francine was our church buddy, even though we joined around the same time. From the second that we first came into Milwaukie Lutheran, Fran made it feel like home. And sorry, I'm just too emotional about this. Honestly, all I can really think of to say is that Franny was one of the best lights in my life and so many other people's lives, and that I'm going to miss her forever.
Okay, I'm gonna give a warning. I was not planning on this, so bear with me here. And I'm sorry if this is long, but I feel like I owe it to Grammy to do this. I'm Darby. I feel like we've learned this by now. But I was more commonly known by my family as Pinky or Pinkie Pie, or Darby Rose by my Grammy. Sorry. It's been a really hard couple years for our family, and I feel like I just saw most of your faces not too long ago. And I wish I could honestly say that it was good to see you guys again. I think a lot of you know how important Grammy was to me, and Peepaw, and my entire family, and my Aunt Beth. I think if I stood here and told you every single one of my favorite memories of my Grammy and me, I would be here for quite literally like years. So I'll just tell you a couple. For the past, I don't even know how long, since I was in 6th grade, I've gone over to my grandparents' house once a week for dinner. Almost once a week. I try my best. As I've gotten older, I try. And it's quite honestly been my favorite tradition ever. A lot of my friends know that it's priority and that they come first. And in recent years, one of those traditions has turned into watching Jeopardy. We're smart people. And I remember one of my favorite things is when one of us would get a question right, how much we would celebrate, even though it was probably the easiest question you could ever get right in Jeopardy. But that's just one of my favorite things ever. And yeah, it's just, my grandmother, she touched a lot of people and she was always very comforting to be around, and that is the same for me. I told her quite literally everything, and our family is very strong. A lot of good people around us as example today. And my last memory I'm going to share with you is my favorite memory, which is a very recent one, which was my 20th birthday, which is back in August. And that was the last birthday that I spent with Grammy, and it was a very special one because I think it was probably our last family gathering where she was very with us. And I will just always cherish that because our family gatherings meant a lot to me. And to have her there for that birthday was very special, and I will never forget it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fran and Bruce's middle child, or as my mom recently referred to me, the fragile one. So, I just wanted to tell you how much I'm going to miss lunch. For you, those of you who don't know, my mom's a bit of a worrier, and in particular, she seemed to worry a lot about me. If I'm being honest, I guess a lot of the time I needed somebody to worry about me. And one way we could alleviate her worrying about me